All right, Professor Paul Rahe is a professor of history at Hillsdale College, one of the most respected scholars at Hillsdale, as well as the Charles O. Lee and Louise K. Lee Chair in Western Heritage. Professor Rahe's entire scholarly career has been focused on studying the origins and evolution of self-government within the West, and that is part of what we want to talk about to him today. Paul, are you there? Hey, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it. And you were very hospitable when I was at Hillsdale, and I appreciate that as well. We talked when we had dinner together. You're called to lecture around the country. You're a very highly respected scholar. What do you see happening to the liberal arts, to the study of the liberal arts at universities in the U.S.?
It's dying. It's dying for two reasons. One, is internal to it. That is to say, the onset of postmodernism and the sort of various post-Marxist outlooks, the effect of it is that people no longer, as often anyway, teach Shakespeare with an eye to what we can learn from Shakespeare. They teach Shakespeare with an eye to how we can trash him. And the practical effect of that is, if English literature is not worth studying, you're going to have a drop in majors, and that's gone on nationwide, and all throughout the humanities. So that's one aspect of it: the fashions within the profession, the politicization of everything, so that everything becomes an occasion for a ranting professor. Not really talking about his subject, but talking about his opinions about contemporary matters. That's one dimension to it. Another dimension to it is, to some degree in this country, which is basically oriented towards business and engineering and STEM, there's always been a question in the back of people's minds: what is the value of this? And so there are sort of two attacks coming at the same time. One is the suicide of people within the humanities, killing the subject that they study. The other is people who aren't really friendly to it anyway. And I'll give you a concrete example of this. This last week, the University of Tulsa, where I taught for 24 years, has decided to gut the humanities. Turn itself into a school that is oriented almost entirely to STEM. And so there won't be a major in philosophy, for example. There won't be a major in religion. And the people in the humanities will go into a division of the humanities and social justice. It's suicidal for this particular university to do this, because what will happen is they will lose large numbers of students. They have a $20 million structural deficit every year. $10 million comes from sports. From the perspective of the trustees, the University of Tulsa is a football team with a university attached. The other is the law school. There's been a tremendous drop in the number of people going to law school, so the law school loses money. And what they're now doing is gutting the College of Arts and Sciences. Now, I mentioned this particular example because it's come up recently, but this sort of thing is going to go on nationwide because people in the liberal arts have lost their way. And the consequence is they're killing the subjects they teach, and there are fewer and fewer students taking them. And, of course, there's always pressure from parents on students who go to college to do something so that they can get a job. Well, how do you explain a philosophy major, a history major, a literature major? We've always been on the defensive. Now we're finished in most places.
Wow.
And I thank God I teach at a college where this doesn't go on.
Well, I was just about to ask you that. I mean, because you obviously take a different tack, does that mean that you don't get invited to places, or that are you ever silenced or disinvited, or are you still basically at such a high level that you can get in?
I'm too academic to get disinvited.
No.
In other words, the topics that I get invited to speak on are, focus topics on, say, Thucydides, or on Herodotus, or on Montesquieu, or on Tocqueville. I don't get invited to give a kind of general address to, 1,000 people on the state of America today. So I don't get disinvited, at least it hasn't happened yet, and nobody's ever shouted me down. But that's because the people who invite me are interested in the kinds of things I write about in the books I write. What doesn't happen to me is I don't get invited to apply for big jobs at famous universities because I'm known to be a conservative. And essentially it has been true for maybe 30 years that conservatives need not apply.
Wow. When you look at the country at this moment, and you look at the state of education, you look at the things that you were talking about the gutting of the humanities, essentially, you have a very vast knowledge of history. Are there other times that this reminds you of? Are there things that you think about? You think, well, gee, this is just like when this happened in Rome or when it happened in Greece or whatever. Is there something that America today reminds you of?
It reminds me of the last days of the Weimar Republic.
Wow.
German history was my minor field. I started off to be a German historian in graduate school. And what goes on at the universities, the kind of attacks that are made, the way administrations conduct themselves, it reminds me of that period where people do get shouted down, where professors get driven out for the things that they say in class that are perfectly respectable things to say, where there's certain topics that you can't teach. If you remember a few years ago at my alma mater, Yale, there was a kerfuffle about Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
And it involved a couple who were masters of a college there. And the woman who taught education resigned. And one of the things she said a year later in the Washington Post was she did not think she could teach the family anymore and the needs of children because she couldn't, she would be harassed if she indicated that fathers are necessary. And
wow.
The reason for that is very simple. There's a chunk of our population where fathers are absentee. And if you want to understand why there's so much crime in the neighborhoods dominated by that population, that's partly tied up with the collapse of the family. But you can't talk about that. So we're entering a world where serious questions in which people really do get hurt by certain social practices can't be discussed.
Wow. Now, obviously, when you say the collapse of the it reminds me of the collapse of the Weimar Republic, chill goes up my spine, and it obviously followed by the Third Reich. Do you see a way of turning the tide here? Is there something that people like you or anybody can be doing to convince the universities that they have gone astray, or is that just a lost cause?
It ought not to be a lost cause, but it might be. Let me say, though, politics is generational. I'm from the baby boom generation. I was in college in the 1960s. I have seen everything that's going on now before. I saw it at Cornell in 1969 when we had an armed building seizure. I saw it in Yale in the spring of 1970 with the reaction to the Black Panther trial. None of this is new. It's the second round, and what's interesting about the first round is it receded. This may recede, but I can tell you the reason why I hesitate to say it will recede is that in 1969, the faculty was by and large, against what was going on. Today, a good chunk of the faculty is in favor of shutting down dissenting views. And the administrations nearly everywhere are in favor of shutting down dissenting views. What happened at Yale was orchestrated from within the administration. This business at the University of Tulsa of turning the humanities into the division of humanities and social justice, meaning of the humanities taught in a partisan fashion, that's being done by the administration. So what worries me is the degree to which the hard left is actually in control of administrations and seemingly supported by trustees.
Yeah, no, I've seen this too. It's appalling. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you'll come back and talk about this some more. Really interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. A little depressing, I'm afraid, but still honest and straightforward. And that's something I have seen as I've traveled around. The thing that appalls me, every university that I go to and college that I go to is not the kids who show up and squirt Michael Knowles. It's not the kids who protest. It's not the hecklers or anything like that. It's always the administration working against free speech, feeling that they have reached a stage where their conversation can end.